want to speak to you for a few moments today on the subject of pleasing God. I want you to ask yourself this question as you reflect back on this past week. One question to consider. Did I, with my life, with my time, with all that God gave me this past week, did I please God? This past week, did my life please God? Our sole purpose as followers of Jesus Christ is to please God. What it means to be a Christian, now listen carefully, is so much more than just walking down and praying a prayer and going back and sitting on a seat. But if you want the definition of what a Christian is, a Christian does not live to please themselves. A Christian does not live to please everyone else. The number one priority of any person who says, I am a born-again Christian, must be number one, forefront, most important thing in my life is that I please God. Every time I engage in an activity, I need to ask this question: will it please God? Every time that I decide whatever I do or whatever I will not do, it should be filtered through this question: will it please God? To be a Christian means you live your life for one reason. See, this is foreign to the American church. But Christianity is not to make you happy. Christianity is not just to bless you. Christianity means I have given up my life and I no longer live to please myself or to please other people. I live for one purpose. It is to please God. That's why the Bible said Enoch was raptured, because he had this testimony. He was taken, caught up by God, and his testimony was, and what a great testimony, he pleased God. Paul's admonition to Timothy in the book of Timothy, the 2nd chapter, was don't get entangled with the cares of this life. Don't get entangled with the cares of this life, that you may please Him who has called you. And so, when you begin to see this, when you begin to understand, and this word entangled has deep meaning. If you talk with people who study trees and plants, as you see the plant life in trees beginning to blossom, and the crepe myrtles and the beauty, they will tell you that there is something that you have to beware of, and they call it sucker shoots that will grow out of a healthy looking tree. And they're little branches, and the deal is this: they're there, and the tree will never reach its full potential for beauty as long as those sucker shoots are coming out of it and attaching themselves to it, because they are draining the life out of that tree. They're sapping the life and the beauty and the potential out of that tree. They're not good limbs. They're limbs that have to be trimmed off and cut off and plucked off. Anyone who works in a yard, anyone who knows anything about farming, knows that weeds are there for one purpose: to choke the life out of the beautiful plants. And that's what a sucker shoot is. It will attach itself. And so the Scripture calls these entanglements the cares of this life, the deceitfulness of riches, the busyness of life. And before you know it, you're entangled, and you have shoots, sucker shoots, that have attached themselves to your spiritual man and they're draining and sapping and taking from you your spiritual life. That's why in Mark chapter 4, in the parable of the sower, the Bible said the sower sowed the seed, and some of the seed fell on thorny ground. And the plant began to grow and shoot up, but the thorns, the scripture said, rose up and began to choke the life out of that good seed that had been planted. And then Jesus interpreted this lesson, and he called the thorns, he said, they represent the cares of this life. I want you to listen to me. They represent the deceitfulness of riches. They represent all of the things that take priority over our life instead of pleasing God. Jesus said that there are people who have the Word, but they allow sucker shoots. They allow weeds of the world. They start off, they get life in them, they're touched, they're anointed, they're filled with His Spirit and on fire for God. But then they begin to get entangled in the cares of this passing, fading world. And then they get caught up in the busyness of life, the deceitfulness of riches, pursuing things, material things, and little by little, the life is choked and sapped out of them. And in case you don't think this is a big deal, in case you think, so what? You need to remember the lesson that Jesus taught in Mark the 11th chapter. When He walked up to a fig tree and He was hungry. The one who created the tree for the purpose to bring forth fruit. And it was leafy and it looked like it should have had fruit. But when the master reached up to pluck from it some fruit, there was no fruit. And Jesus, sweet Jesus, kind Jesus, was so upset with this tree that looked like a fruitful tree. It had an outward appearance of fruitfulness. It had a look like it should look, but there was no fruit. And Jesus cursed it, and it died from the roots.